An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? You're stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 108. I'm Aaron Pellier.
And I'm Darlene.
And we said last time that we were going to do the sequel to Amazing Colossal Man called War the Colossal Beast from 1958. The reason why we decided to do this is that we went to a wonderful restaurant in Decatur, Indiana called Famous Monster Pizza, and they play B-movies on big screens while you eat, and we had this movie playing at one point, so we decided to do the original movie, which is Amazing Colossal Man, and then this as the sequel immediately afterwards. Darlene, besides when we were at Famous Monster Pizza, have you ever seen this movie?
This one, no. I've seen bits of it, like the bus.
Oh, like the school kids in the bus?
Yeah.
At the end? Okay. This was available on YouTube. We found it just fine in YouTube. It is a black and white movie, asterisk, because it does a thing that a few other movies that we have watched do, and they have one scene that's in color, and it's there for, like, shock value.
It wasn't that shocking.
Well, yes, it was shocking. Ha 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 ha.
Well, yes, what happened?
What happens is shocking. Is this movie better or worse, before we get into the plot, from the first movie? We didn't really recommend the first movie, but it was like a light not recommendation.
I would recommend the first movie before this
one.
Oh,
this is much worse.
This is far worse.
There's no reason for this movie to have
and
ever
this is
been
69
made.
minutes long.
Okay, it's 69 minutes long. Nice. But it is not 69 minutes worth of movie.
Well, probably about 20 minutes of it is movies from the last movie.
It's not 20 minutes. There is a significant amount of movie in here from the first movie. That's just literally replaying scenes from the first movie. But it's not 20 minutes. I'd say it's maybe 10. Okay? It is excessive. And the main character moaning and groaning,
that drove me nuts. But I don't know if that's because my ear has got an infection in it.
It's maybe another 10 minutes of him doing nothing but groaning and moaning on screen. So if you take all of that out, which is just either uncomfortable, unneeded, or whatever, this is an hour-long TV movie at best with commercials.
I will give him one thing. He's not on a big mattress.
No.
Oh, and this was a double feature with Attack of the Puppet People, which we haven't done,
but we might. And I think Attack of the Puppet People is actually a classic that we're going to, if you haven't been able to tell, we do classics on the 5 and 10s. So we would probably leave that for one of the 5 or 10s. Attack of the Puppet People is a classic. This we can start in on the plot, and then we'll go into what works and what doesn't.
I would also like to make it known that the person that is Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Manning is not the same person playing him.
Okay.
That's probably why the face looks a mess.
Okay, none of the main actors from the first movie appear in this except in flashbacks.
And continuity problems.
Oh, there's tons of continuity problems from the first movie.
I wrote down 3 of them.
Okay, 3 things.
No living relative, but there's Joyce's sister in this
Yes,
one.
Okay, so in the first movie, it is stated that there is no family. Glenn Manning has no family at all. There's nobody. But
except for his fiance.
Except for his fiance. His fiance is the only person that he has a relationship with at all There is no family. In this movie, he has a sister.
Then we have his heart was supposed to be killing him because it wasn't growing at the same rate.
Yes, but he stopped growing. Now, theoretically, he should still be incredibly weak because of that, but he's not. I'm okay with him not being dead from the heart issue
How
because
about the fall?
the fall should have killed him, yes. Now, what else? What's the other continuity issue? The third one that you found.
He has the hole in his face, but has his body was supposed to be being able to be regenerating.
Ooh, yeah, okay. True. I can make an excuse for that though, but it's this is barely an excuse, and they don't talk about it in the movie. So I'm not going to give the movie credit. You're right. That's kind of a screw up. My explanation for it is, and see, we haven't even really gotten into the plot yet, but my explanation for it is when they gave him the shot at the end of the first movie, it stopped almost everything that was really happening to him. So when they shot him in the face, it's like he still had enough in him, like whatever was happening to him was still enough that he didn't die, but he didn't regenerate like half his face. Okay, so spoiler alert, yes, Glenn Manning did not die at the end of the first movie. Okay, he survived the bazooka blast to the face. He survived the fall off of the top of Hoover Dam. He fell into the Colorado River, the raging Colorado River.
And had to have gone all the way down to Baja, California to get where he was.
Yes, so theoretically, he was in the water unconscious for hundreds of miles. Theoretically. I mean, he could have just kept swimming because the movie begins in freaking Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this is when we were in Famous Monster Pizza watching this. I'm like, no one's going to understand anything about what's going on in this movie because there were other people in the restaurant with us, and it's a car chase, but it's a single car chase. It is an old truck, like a delivery truck, just screaming across the desert for no good reason. Okay,
and gets stuck in the mud.
It gets stuck in the mud. And when it does, a man jumps out and just starts screaming and thrashing in what I can only describe as a hissy fit in this water. And then it goes to the credits. Like, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell is happening? Okay, because I've never seen this one before.
Even if you watched the first one, you still would have been, what the hell is going on with this one?
Yes. Because they don't introduce the former Glenn Manning, now played by somebody completely different with half his face blown off. They don't introduce that person right away. So what happens after the credits is that Swanson, the owner of a gun
club,
owner of a gun club, owned this truck that was being driven at the beginning of the movie. He had hired this kid who was driving the truck to go pick up groceries because I guess rich Americans come down to Mexico for this gun club.
But he already had a vehicle, so he needed somebody else to drive the second one.
Yes, so he hired this kid, and now he's there at the police station reporting that his truck is missing. Now, this Swanson guy, okay,
can
go
I
ahead.
tell you, it's get the picture. That's his words that he's saying every sentence.
My truck is missing. I don't know where it is. Do you get the picture? Yeah, and he's a stereotypical, incredibly offensive and annoying
American Texan.
Yes, whose idea of
and that's not against Texans. That's against the fact of the stereotype of the American Texan.
Yeah, his idea of trying to be understood by a man who already speaks English. The police officer speaks English, is speaking very loudly and very slowly rather than just intelligently. And this cop has the patience of a saint.
Yes, he is very good at his job.
Because if this was an American cop in the 21st century, Swanson would have been pistol whipped, in handcuffs, maybe with some broken teeth, and then he might get to talk to somebody
Well, today
a little later.
in Mexico, you'd probably be
He'd
thrown in jail.
probably thrown in jail too. I wrote down he's just a massive jerk to this police officer, but the cop ends up taking him across the street and he sees the boy that he hired in a hospital bed. This kid is in shock, and I shouldn't say he's a kid. He's like a teenager. He's old enough to have driven a truck.
I thought he said he was like 16 because he did call Mr. Swanson did call him a teenager.
Yeah, he's a teenager. He's just not.
But I would have thought he looked like he was 17, 18 years old.
So, since this child, he is a child, he's even if teenager, he is still a child who is clearly in shock, who is like drooling on himself, eyes wide open, unable to respond. What is Swanson's idea of trying to understand what the problem is?
Yell at him.
Yells at the child, getting in his face, shaking him.
Where's my truck? My truck is not here. Get the picture.
Yeah, like, okay, so are we supposed to hate Swanson? I mean, obviously we are, but this is the kind of behavior that you normally ascribe to antagonists in the movie. But he's not. He disappears after the next scene. Like, he's not really important. He's not
The truck
really.
is, though.
The truck is. But we'll get to that. So for some reason, we then go to see a woman named Joyce Manning, played by Sally Frazier. Joyce Manning is the sister that we never knew, Colonel Manning.
That he never had.
And she sees a news report about a truck disappearing in Mexico. Now,
she makes the connection of this truck disappearing and other, because there is
she in Mexico, Darlene?
No.
Okay. Why would a news reporter in Los Angeles, California, report on a random missing truck?
It's not just random.
It is reported that way.
Oh, I got it that there was several.
No, well, that is the point. There have been several trucks, but it's not reported that way. It's not reported as...
Is it from the end of the movie?
No, it's the middle of the movie where we learn that there's tons of trucks missing.
Okay.
But the point is that this news reporter isn't stating that this is one in a series of like dozens of missing trucks. This is just a random missing truck.
Grocery truck at that. And it's just a pickup truck, basically.
It's like a 2.5 ton truck. Let's put it that at most. I think it's a 1.5 ton truck, but regardless.
When I lived in California, those things were always being used for strawberries and on a farm.
Is it like a super special truck? No, it's not a super rare truck. It's a random truck in the middle of Mexico that disappears, and it's on a Los Angeles newscast. And Joyce Manning seemingly just randomly watches it and puts the pieces together to say, my brother isn't dead. He's making trucks disappear.
She must have been hearing from God.
No, it's the what really happened is Joyce read the script.
Well, that was what being a writer is the writer.
So Joyce immediately goes to Mexico and calls in the U.S. military, who responds directly and promptly to her summons.
Yeah, she gets a major.
She gets Major Bard, played by Roger Pace. He and another doctor, I think his name is Dr. Carmichael.
Carmichael, yes.
Who is also working for the military, come down to Mexico to check out this kid and to find out where this truck disappeared. So they're randomly kind of going around. They figure out this kid is in shock. He's not really answering questions except to say that there was like a giant man. Oh, look, this random coincidence put everybody in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, and they get the policia to go down to show them where they found the truck, and there's a big footprint.
There's a giant footprint.
And at first I was like, that's only got 3 toes.
No,
it
had 5.
It had 5.
But it's a giant footprint days after this event happened, right? At least days after.
And still wet.
It's it could be in a low spot. I'm not going to give him crap for that. I'm just thinking like this is days and days afterwards. You would think that it had been like it might have rained, but it's still a perfectly formed human footprint that is 10 times the size it should be.
Well,
Okay.
let's go with this one. Let's just put it this way. It's there. We do have footprints from before the Ice Age.
Okay, but what I'm trying to get to is that the cops clearly went out there to investigate,
But didn't see the big
and
giant foot.
didn't see this
Big
giant
footprint.
perfectly visible footprint in the ground. Like, what? Bert I. Gordon, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, this movie is pretty bad. We learned that Major Bard believes that the Colorado River is a mile deep. Not a mile wide, not a mile long, a mile deep after the point where it is at Hoover Dam. So it's very possible that when Manning went over the Hoover Dam, I wrote it down and underlined it because I even went
at
back.
the time, I'll give them this. At the time, maybe where the Hoover Dam is, it was a mile.
How deep is Lake Michigan, Darlene?
I don't know.
Not that deep.
Lake Superior?
Not that deep.
Okay, then no.
It is not a mile deep.
A mile would be
5,000 feet deep, more than 5,000, 5,280 feet. Come on. Yeah, no, but Major Bard believes that the Colorado River is a mile deep and could have hidden the body of Glenn Manning as it tumbled around underwater after having a bazooka blast to the face.
Bullshit.
Yeah, I know. And like hundreds of foot drop onto rocks. Yeah.
You got the other continuity error. See,
So-
I didn't catch that one.
What they end up doing is they end up driving into the mountains to find the wreckage of another truck. The major then liaises with the Mexican military and involves troops and artillery to hunt down Glenn Manning.
Yeah.
He says, don't worry if we find Glenn. If he's insane, we'll either shoot him with troops or we'll bombard him with field artillery.
And let me get this one. This is a lieutenant colonel of the military. I don't care.
No, he's not lieutenant colonel. He's a major.
No, I'm talking about Glenn Manning.
Yeah, he is lieutenant colonel.
He is a lieutenant colonel. And in this movie, he's Colonel
Because
Glenn
they never
Manning.
refer to him as lieutenant colonel.
He's colonel. He's been promoted to colonel.
Yeah.
There's another shit storm.
Okay, keep going.
And if he was some top secret thing, you keep the lid on it.
Well,
Number one.
it's so in everything is in the open in this movie.
Okay, or you would be out in the open trying to get him back.
Okay. Remember that we've already established in the first movie that there is no operational security in the U.S. military.
Different movie.
Different movie, but it's the same universe.
Has
and
a
we've already
sister that he
established-
didn't have in the first
We've
one.
already established that the U.S. military in this story
Is
does not care about operational security, top secret clearance, anything that is important to national security. Totally in the open. But he gets involved, the Mexican military. So then Major Bard and Joyce find a truck graveyard that Glenn has been raiding for food. It turns out that he has been capturing trucks, moaning and groaning this entire time.
they find it when they have a rock slide.
It's after the rock slide.
Only after the rock slide. That's what I wanted to make the point of.
Yeah, so they find this truck graveyard. It's all food trucks. He's been like shaking the food out of them and then tossing the trucks away. Okay. So we then have the most genius idea ever in this. What do you do to capture a 60-foot tall man? Well, one would think you don't. What you think is the first thing that I would think of.
See, that even
is-
captured our cat.
What the first thing I would think of is if we're in this universe where there's comically oversized syringes, that we drop a syringe on his head filled with knockout. We gas him because at this point,
No, they put it in the food that they were taking.
I know that's what I'm trying to get at. It's a ridiculous plan that they have because it puts everybody at risk. It's possible. Anyway, the point is that Darlene got to before I tried to get before I was
had
able
to
to
drink
get to it.
before saying this. Anything.
The doctor ends up having bread baked that contains knockout drugs, and they're going to go feed it to Glenn by driving a truck around in the desert until he smells the bread and comes and grabs this truck. It is insane. No, you would go out there with like a helicopter and drop knockout gas on him. You'd shell him with like knockout, like chemical weapons, because at this point, we already realize that Glenn Manning is a threat to the world. He's killing people. Now you can say, oh, he's out of his mind, because later on they try to say, hey, we're going to give him a chance to like try to regain his senses. But it's clear that the man has massive brain damage.
From lack of oxygen.
Well, he has a tiny heart, right? That is not pumping oxygen around his body very well. So he should have a hard time like moving around and doing things like that, right? But
boy, the muscle, think of the muscle, what is it called? The atrophy that we get?
Yeah. But it's not just that, like he took a bazooka round to the head and has no flesh at all on half of his head and has no eye. Like
there's a hole in the eye socket.
Yeah, he has like an empty eye socket.
And teeth that are just hanging out there.
Yeah, you would think that the man would have massive infections. I mean, he's just kind of he floated down the Colorado River, for God's sakes.
Ugh.
Like, no.
Into Mexico.
All right,
in the 1950s.
I'm going to get through this plot faster because this is ridiculous. So they knock him out. They capture him. They bring him back to the U.S. But since it's the U.S. military bringing him back to the U.S. for testing, where do they take him? Do they take him to a military base, Darlene?
No.
They take him to a civil airport where the mayor refuses to have him land.
Yes, and it's his name on the cast list is only Mayor.
It's just Mayor?
Yeah.
So I paused the movie and I said, Darlene, how are they going to resolve this? They fly him to a military base. Do they do that?
No.
Do they laugh in the mayor's face and say, we're the U.S. military, you don't tell us what to do?
No.
They just say, you're going to make our plane crash, sir. We're going to
use this warehouse over here.
Yeah. We're going to use this unsecured warehouse instead of taking him to a military facility. Like, we're not going to take him to Area 51. We're not going to take him out in the middle of the desert where even if he does escape, he still has to walk 100 miles
it had a plane that you loved.
Well, it did. It had a C-124 Globemaster that they were flying him around in?
Yeah.
I actually like that plane. All right. So anyway, they take him to this warehouse.
Talk about that plane?
No, I'm just going to say it's C-124 Globemaster. It actually has a tail number of CA-406. That's all I'll say about it. But they take him to this hangar at an airport in L.A. Then we get all these flashbacks to the original movie. Glenn starts freaking out because I guess it's him having these flashbacks. And Army personnel struggle against him to keep him down. He escapes his bindings and rampages around the airport. How do they recapture him? It does not matter. They do. He rampages around the airport in exactly the way that you would think a giant monster would, getting loose in a civilian airport. Yeah, just constantly groaning. But he is able to be knocked out again. He's recaptured, and they try to end up getting him to remember his former self through like showing him pictures of his former life, like of his friends in the military or things like that. It doesn't matter. Glenn just screams and moans on this bench. He's clearly lost his mind. There's like a newspaper that says Giant Man has failed his last test or whatever. So what does the military do? Put this guy out of his misery? No. They plan on flying him out to an island off of LA, and then they will airdrop food onto the island for him to live out his days as a tortured, brain damaged human in constant pain, suffering from having half a head. You sick bastards.
And lack of oxygen.
Now, we not only have that, but we now have the ability for anybody, any other nation, any other hostile nation, to like go in there and try to grab him, to do like testing on him for like whatever made him like this. Anyone can just go out there and like take a chunk out of him with this plan. It's not like this is a protected island.
Yeah, I'm
It's just-
a megalomaniac. I think that I need about 200 of these big giants.
I mean, not that they would be able to theoretically like recreate the circumstances, but the point is that the U.S. military doesn't know that other people wouldn't be able to. Maybe they could.
Maybe they could.
All it takes is one like Soviet fishing trawler off Santa Catalina, Santa, whatever the freaking islands out there. Is it Santa Catalina?
I don't know.
Anyway, he ends up getting loose again, as always.
I do want to point out a factor of this one. They show him walking, and there's no way that he's only 60 foot tall, because the foot is bigger than the truck.
Yeah, he's like his size is variable upon wherever the camera is placed and how they're filming the green screen of it. Like it doesn't matter. It's variable. Sometimes he seems like he's maybe 40 feet tall. Sometimes he seems like he's 200. It just all depends. So he gets loose again. Joyce and Bard start to coordinate the response. He's spotted in Griffith Park because obviously walking through one of the most densely populated cities in America, no one spots him until he makes it to Griffith Park. He's a 60-foot tall man. Now I can understand maybe not seeing him for an hour or something like that, but this is like a day or something like that.
Can I remind you that they lost him how many times in the first movie and how many times in this movie?
Well, the U.S. military is entirely incompetent. Anyway, he's spotted in Griffith Park. There's a school bus of children up on a trip. Glenn wrecks some power lines, and then he picks up a school bus, and Joyce goes out there and says, You're Glenn Manning. Put the kids down. They don't have anything to, they haven't done anything wrong. And he's like, oh, Joyce.
Oh.
He says Joyce.
Oh, does he say
Yeah, he says Joyce. He puts the kids down and then decides that he has suffered long enough, and he electrocutes himself. The film goes into color. He electrocutes himself on the power lines and screams and screams and screams, and then just vaporizes into a puff of logic.
Yes, very much like a puff of logic, because there wasn't even dust left over.
No, he just kind of fades away. The end. Yeah, I hate this movie. I mean, it puts the first movie, it puts Amazing Colossal Man in perspective, because
As far better.
Amazing Colossal Man's not a good movie.
But what have we always said about second-level movies?
They're generally worse. Not always, but generally. There are exceptions to the rule.
Like?
Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
You're like, okay. Wrath of Khan over the motion picture. While I will say I do like I like the motion picture quite a bit for what it is, even though it's slow.
Wrath of Khan is damn good. And
Well,
they keep
yeah.
trying to remake it.
Yeah, like the second JJ movie was just kind of a big ripoff of that.
Stop it!
Yeah, stop it.
Stop
Just don't do it. Nemesis was kind of a ripoff of Wrath of Khan in a lot of ways as well. Anyway, this movie was far, far worse. Far worse. So, what worked in this movie, Darlene? And I know there isn't going to be a lot. This is still not as offensively bad as the USA, the propaganda movies that we've watched. But what worked?
Learn how to keep your cool as being a Mexican policia under the force of a stupid American.
Aggressively stupid American. But that's not what works. Like, that's just, hey, if you're gonna, it's awesome that this actor was able to
not laugh
at this guy, because this guy was clearly, the Swanson guy was clearly hamming it up, right? Like, What
Oh,
worked?
God.
No, what worked? I have to really struggle to find something that did work in this movie, but I think I can.
I found a lot of things that didn't work.
But we're talking about what worked.
I don't know. What does work?
It barely does, but I think the Glenn Manning half his head blown off makeup is not bad. It's not great. It works for what it is supposed to do, which is hide the fact that they couldn't get the original actor back. So they had to get like somebody else to play the part. So they had to have half his head blown off.
And make him grunt only.
And the makeup isn't bad.
I'll say, yeah, that's not too bad.
It's not great, but that's about all I can say that works in this movie, because I think the makeup does do what it's supposed to do.
This makes it go into horror.
No, it isn't. It's not horror. It's
Because
just
that-
dumb. It's too dumb for that.
Yeah. Have you watched the horror that is lately? The bloody gore crap?
Yeah. It's dumb.
Okay.
It's dumb, but it's at least the gore is fairly competently done. But it's dumb. It's just as dumb. I'm more just disgusted by modern horror. This isn't really even horror either, though I will say it's more unsettling. But I don't think it was intended to be unsettling, because here's this guy who's clearly suffering. If there is anything that is human left in his mind, he is deranged by pain, by humiliation of his situation. Like, he can never be with regular people ever again because he's a monster, effectively. He's not only a monster because of his size, but because half his head's blown off. It's the movie's unsettling.
Half his teeth are showing.
Yeah, because even a bazooka couldn't kill him. A fall off of Hoover Dam couldn't kill him.
So how does electrocuting himself kill him?
I don't know. He figured it out somehow. It vaporized him. At least he's
continuity error again.
At least he's not suffering anymore. That's what. If there is horror in this movie, it is the unnecessary suffering of Glenn Manning that no one seems to be willing to say, maybe he shouldn't live like this.
See, shouldn't this name of this movie be The Return of the Colossal Man?
Yeah, because it's not a war. He gets his ass kicked every single time he escapes, because, and the only reason he escapes is because the army makes the worst decisions possible. Is there anything that hides is there anything that lays right between works and doesn't work? Because I want to try to be fair to this movie. I don't want to just constantly say that everything doesn't work in this movie. There has to be something that's it's okay. I'll say the makeup does its job, so that's why I say it works.
Okay.
What lies in between, Darlene? What lies in between? What's
the secondary characters?
Secondary characters? Yeah,
they
I
have
guess
more character than the doggone characters.
Yeah, the background characters, like the police officer, even Swanson being such a dick. At least he's memorable, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What about Sally Fraser as Joyce Manning? I think she was gorgeous in this film, but that's all I can say about her in this.
She's not memorable.
She's not memorable. She's just kind of a wet blanket, and she doesn't really even make sense in the context of the first movie, right?
What came across to me was that she was like, what's that? Gilmore's, the director for Gilmore.
Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler. It's like an Adam Sandler movie needing to pay movie stars to get their rent paid.
This is just a movie made to make
rent,
money, make rent for them. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. So what? We're having even trouble finding things that are So what doesn't work? What really? And let's just do the top of these are the things that really don't work.
Continuity.
Okay, continuity is awful compared to don't even bother watching the first movie and memorizing the plot points from it to watch this, because it doesn't matter.
they don't have a continuity of the size of the creature. They didn't have that in the first one either.
No, they don't. But anything that mattered plot-wise in the first movie does not matter here. Right?
Correct.
I will say what does not work is the entire plot of this movie is ridiculous. Like, why do you need to make a sequel to a movie that had a fairly I won't say well done, but a fairly complete ending in the first movie? You don't need to bring it back, especially when you can't get any of the original actors back.
And you have to change history of the movie.
And then you also have to fill, let's say, a fifth of your running time with just the Glenn Manning groaning or flashbacks to the original movie, so you can remember times where the character actually did something. Like, compared in the first movie, the characters actually had a little bit of character.
But we
They
did
did
say
things.
that Glenn, you needed to make Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Manning, even in the first one, we needed to have sympathy for him.
And we did.
And they didn't.
And in this,
why would you continue?
Darlene, I will actually say that I had more sympathy for Manning in this movie than in the second movie, just because of his suffering.
Because he looked like a beat up little kid that was 60 foot tall.
Yeah, he has one eye. Half his head's blown off. The man is clearly in pain.
And because he moans all the time, you're like, oh my God, just kill him and get it over with. Give him mercy.
It's a mercy. Yeah, I mean, that I had sympathy for him in this movie rather than the first movie.
That's sad.
Yeah. That is sad. You want to help him. I want to go, this guy does not deserve this.
Boy, do I need to talk to my therapist about this?
Yeah, I don't know. It's awful. Like, this poor guy. I'll say the only positive thing in this movie, actors wise, is Sally Fraser as Joyce Manning, just because she's really pretty. And I'm sorry for being so superficial on that. Like, is she a good actress in other things that she's been in? I'm sure. She actually has a pretty long credit list. But there's nothing here to work with.
This is like an Adam Sandler's movie.
There's just nothing here. There's nothing here. This is not really a movie. This is a paycheck.
This is paychecks for actors.
I will also have to say that even with Invasion USA or Rocket Attack USA, as much as I despise those movies, there is a point to those movies.
Creeping Terror.
Even Creeping Terror is, hey, we want to make a movie about this thing that eats people. Yes, we don't have the monster costume anymore because the guy walked off with it because he didn't get paid. Fine. There's a movie there. I don't know if this is a movie.
That's bad.
But is it as bad as Rocket Attack USA? Or no, because in the end, those propaganda movies ticked me off. This is just, it's not a good movie.
It just makes you depressed about
Glenn Manning. Yeah.
Glenn Manning, a colonel that went into war in the Korean War.
He was in the Korean War. He volunteered because it was his duty as an American to go to war. He was in the reserves, yes, but he volunteered.
You don't even hear about his fiance,
who should have gotten in there. Like, oh, Glenn's actually alive. You know, like, oh my God, this is the man I loved. Nope, she doesn't
even have the characters that were in the military back then.
Yeah.
I could see somebody that was a friend of his in Korean War going, okay, where is, that's what I had to say about the first one was they should have had somebody from the Korean War.
One of his buddies.
That's attached to him.
Try to talk him down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say that when we were in Famous Monster Pizza watching this movie, we had a lot of fun watching this movie.
But we were eating and enjoying popcorn, and
we had beer.
We had beer.
And we had an audience that was listening to us like rip on this movie while we were watching it.
And you were MSTKing it.
Damn straight I was. Damn straight. But anyway, because that's where I made the woman shoot coke out of her nose. 6-year-old woman shoot coke out of her nose was one of my jokes. But we don't recommend this movie. Like on a 1 out of, like, okay, maybe I should ask.
3.
You say a 3. Wow. That's bold. Because I would say that like Amazing Colossal Man is a 3 for me. This is more like a 2.
Well, I gave him it a 5. Didn't I?
I don't remember. Like combining these two, maybe 3.5 for the first one for Amazing Colossal Man, 3.5, 4, let's say.
Okay.
I don't remember what I gave.
So if that's
even though
the
we
case,
taped,
then it would be 2 to me.
like a 2 or a 3. Like it's lower than, it's not as good as the first one, and I don't even really want to watch the first one again. I could see watching the first one to make fun of it, but like this is just, it's upsetting.
I could not see it without doing MSTK.
Yeah, MST3K. So, I don't know. I don't even think there's any. Maybe I should ask: is there anything a modern filmmaker can take away?
Don't do it.
Don't do things like this. Like, yeah, don't make needless sequels for a paycheck, because when your heart's not in it, it shows. And it shows that their hearts weren't in it.
The secondary characters had more oomph than the main characters.
Yeah, because Joyce Manning was like a wet blanket. Major Mark Baird.
But
can you remember a thing about him except that he had like a 6-sided star as a badge on his arm? What, like, did he have dark hair? Did he have like dirty blonde-ish hair? I mean, you can't tell in black and white, but you know what I mean? Like a lighter colored dark hair. Did he have a mustache? Do you remember?
No.
No, because he's a wet blanket too.
But the police...
I can remember the police officer. He had dark hair. He had a mustache.
I can remember Swanson.
Swanson had a mustache too, didn't he?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I want to say he did. Anyway.
I can't remember Dr. Carmichael.
I can remember the Swanson logo on
I
the
can
side
just
of the truck.
remember that Joyce was just a pretty face.
She was very pretty. And I hate being superficial like that, but
that's all this...
That's
this
all there is to it.
Music. Yeah. Play the music. That's it.
So sorry if we're really down on this one, but yeah, it's not that great.
We do not recommend this.
We do not recommend it. I don't know what we're going to do for 109, but I think we know what we're going to do for 110.
What are we doing for 110?
You said you wanted to do Dracula.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
See Bela Lugosi in his You Must
But
Be
we
Double
also
Jointed.
got Black Cat that we need to do.
Oh, yeah. We need to find Black Cat because we saw a really cool movie poster for Black Cat.
But it's got 2 of the icons that hated each other.
Yeah,
well,
it has Bela
Lugosi hated
Boris Karloff.
But it has 2 of the famous people of the 1930s.
There's a lot of movies like that with Bela Lugosi and Karloff, though. Believe it or not, there are.
But that's the highest rating one.
Yeah, that is. We need to find it. We don't have a copy of Black Cat. But anyway.
Do I need to order it?
Maybe. We'll have to look.
Okay.
So I'm Aaron.
I'm Darlene. Have a good evening.
And keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.